Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring some unbelievable story. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Michael's character was characterized by his restless energy, which made it practically difficult for him to remain in one location throughout his youth. His love of the outdoors had been his refuge, a place where he felt alive, from the rocky paths of the Scottish Highlands to the difficult climbs of Mount Sefton. He saw the forest as an escape from the humdrum of everyday life. These events shaped his view on resilience and loneliness. However, as time passed, his youthful exuberance gave way to the weight of adult obligations. His life became a habit of early commutes, long days at work, and evenings spent juggling the stresses of marriage. Though he loved his wife, Sophia, he couldn't ignore the increasing distance between them, which was filled with unsaid words and unfulfilled expectations. For years, they had coasted through life together, avoiding the difficult facts that neither dared to address. Michael inhaled, releasing the stale air of the clinic from his lungs, and halted at the doorway to take up the warmth of the sunshine. He promised himself a cup of coffee after all was said and done, and then walked across the hospital parking lot to a quiet retail area. Two lads on BMX bikes were showing off, doing feats around the security posts and balancing on one wheel before driving away into an alley. He followed after them carefully, taking each step deliberately. After a time, Michael found himself looking out the dusty window of the dry cleaners. Time to pull yourself together, he reminded himself. As predicted, the news was bad, and his thoughts were jumbled by what he had just learnt. He should have taken Sophia with him. He fought to recall why he hadn't. She would have recalled everything the oncologist had said, taken notes, and asked more probing questions. Watching the lads leap across damaged pavement filled him with emptiness and hate. It seemed like no time had gone since he was a youngster, full of the same innocent enthusiasm about life's unfolding events. Looking at the gloomy suburban environment, he felt as if he had already died. There was not even a cafe here. The diagnosis was bladder cancer, with additional tumors in his pelvis and chest. The idea was to do urgent surgery in 3 days, followed by radiation and chemotherapy. The doctor didn't sugarcoat the prognosis. "So, I'm likely going to pass?" Michael inquired. The young doctor nodded. "But there's still hope. We'll do our best to manage the pain and give you as much time as possible." "Stay positive," Michael said, steadying himself and pulling out his phone. He attempted to phone Sophia's office, but the call went unanswered. He remained there quietly, hoping that someone would pick up. "Come on, Sophia, pick up. I really need to talk to you, just this once." Eventually, a new receptionist responded and claimed Sophia was not available. Michael stated that he was her spouse, that it was an emergency, and that he needed to meet with her immediately. After a lengthy delay, the receptionist plainly said that Sophia was on vacation that day. "You'll have to try elsewhere." Michael was taken aback, and his own worries faded for a minute. Sophia was always at work. She never missed a day, whether due to sickness or anything else. He called the home number just in case, but it went directly to voicemail. He then phoned her cell phone. She was never excellent at answering the phone, and the call went to voicemail again. Instead of leaving a disgruntled note, he texted, "Call me back as soon as you see this. We need to talk." By the time he got to his vehicle, he had received an answer, "What's the problem?" The response was faint, but it impacted him hard. Why had she not phoned him back? He tried again, but the call went to voicemail. He felt really alone. Sophia had no cause to feel guilty on the train to Bristol, yet she nevertheless worried throughout the most of the journey. Why hadn't she informed Michael about her trip? Nathan was not her boyfriend, he was only a buddy. Michael would have understood if she indicated she was assisting him. Her guilt was illogical. She worked hard hours and had few interests, so she earned a break. This has nothing to do with Michael. She drank a big coffee she had purchased at the station and read a fashion magazine. Rush hour was ended and the train was almost empty. Despite her concerns, she was able to relax and enjoy the situation. Yes, she had gone close to cheating a few times over the years, but she had never injured anybody, which was the most important thing. She had met Nathan 4 years ago on a difficult day in a business law class. They had collaborated on a project for a month and then stayed in contact, usually via phone, to offer legal advice. Their chats progressed beyond business and into friendship. Nathan had a keen sense of humor and a reasonable attitude on life, which contrasted well with Michael's emotional and unpredictable nature. Contract law discussions often elicited personal experiences. Sophia informed Nathan about their housing issues. Michael was always battling with their landlord or neighbors, so they relocated regularly. Nathan told funny anecdotes about his own failed romances, ranging from serious to ludicrous. While his business was flourishing, Sophia looked forward to Nathan's letters, particularly the late-night emails that helped her relax. What started as professional conversations quickly turned into a comfortable relationship, providing a pleasant break from her everyday stresses. Sophia was aware from away that her emotions for Nathan were inappropriate. He fascinated her since he was so unlike the males she knew. Michael was smart and unpredictable, so she had to be on her toes to keep up. Nathan, on the other hand, was calm and confident, never losing his cool or running out of things to say. Their chats seemed more genuine than any she'd had with anybody else. She played the part of the knowledgeable friend, inquiring about his personal life and delighted that he took her counsel seriously. He dated rich, well-connected women he met at work, and his romantic relationships followed a predictable pattern. They began with passion and ended suddenly for no apparent reason. She said that it was because he struggled to commit, couldn't trust anybody, and only felt in charge when things were done his way. Sophia felt Nathan loved the excitement of the hunt and missed women after he had them, but he was also profoundly in love at one point, a guy who communicated his emotions honestly and with humor, which she found attractive. She worried about this remote connection, telling herself it would be all right if they never met. Despite being aware of the hazards, she assumed that following this guideline would result in no harm. Michael had no cause to complain. Nobody was wounded, and everyone won. Sophia and Nathan were close, yet quite different. They trusted each other with their troubles, but there was no way of going beyond a supporting relationship. Sophia was violating her own rule by going to see Nathan under unusual circumstances. He had just married, but now, saddened, he wrote to her about his wife's adultery and their split. He was alone and anxious for assistance. Sophia understood she had to answer, even if it created problems. Nathan was her buddy, and aiding him seemed natural. She could give Michael the basics. Nathan was merely a work friend, without discussing the 5 years of covert contact. She pondered this seriously. More revelations would just exacerbate Michael's inclination to exaggerate things, and Michael's gloomy, aloof conduct had lately made her hesitant to discuss her own worries with him. She immediately questioned whether her worry stemmed from a concern that seeing Nathan might jeopardize their relationship. She didn't feel glamorous enough to match his previous partners, and she was afraid she'd fail him or annoy herself. But by the time the train arrived in Bristol, she was pleased to be seeing him, expecting that it would reinforce their special link. Sophia saw Michael's SMS as she stepped off the train at Central Station. Irritated, she read it. Michael never messaged her. Why now? He also phoned, but she knew he understood that she didn't accept personal calls at work. Her irritability increased, motivated by guilt. What could be more urgent? She responded, "What's the problem?" But meaning, "Stop ruining my day." A few moments later, another text came, and her attitude changed. Nathan's Cafe. David Harper. Can't wait to see you. Love you, Nathan. She threw a few pennies to a beggar on her way to Oxford Street, disregarding Michael's message. Without a signal on the underground, the text went unanswered. When she arrived to the cafe, she found Nathan seated outside, which raised her spirits. When she approached, he turned and smiled as if they had known each other for years. They exchanged cheek kisses before impulsively embracing like long-lost lovers. It seemed easy and liberating, a statement of their relief at being together again. Sophia couldn't keep her gaze away from his face, and Nathan grinned, attempting to figure out what was going on between them. They sat down for lunch and ate snacks, something Michael would never do. Sophia selected a fruit dessert with cream, while Nathan chose beer and ham. They chuckled at one other's selections before Nathan started telling his tale. It was difficult, but Sophia listened sympathetically as he described how he discovered his wife's infidelity. She had moved out while he was abroad on business, leaving just a letter. Nathan's eyes welled up with tears as he spoke, and he grasped his fork hard. The intensity of the talk drained them both, so they decided to seek some fresh air after lunch. They went through the department store, got a cab to the Obelisk, and then strolled down the River Clyde, along George Street and up to Princess Street Gardens. They even went to the National Gallery to view a new artwork by Kai. Sophia was scheduled to be home for supper, but time slipped by. In the gallery cafe, she appreciated Nathan's intelligent, sardonic tone of voice and his ability to pick up on her remarks without ignoring them. He provided a pleasant diversion from his personal dilemma, discussing business and a difficult corporate acquisition. They connected on a variety of levels. Sophia later had a drink of wine at a tavern and found herself chatting about Michael. It seemed strange to discuss her marriage with another guy, but she soon rationalized it by pointing out Michael's positive qualities, generosity, bravery, and excitement. However, she also revealed that he had grown aloof and introverted, refusing to discuss or seek therapy for what she felt was depression. His sarcasm and vicious comments frequently seemed like personal assaults, and she struggled to cope with his mood swings. Nathan did not reprimand Michael, rather, he encouraged her, adding, "We all deserve respect. He has no right to take his problems out on you." It felt nice to have someone who supported her. Sophia's life became brighter after speaking with Nathan. She hadn't felt so alive in a long time. For a time, Nathan was content, and Sophia had a friend who eagerly accompanied her for shopping and countless discussions about work, love, and similar interests. Nathan said it was a mistake not to meet sooner. "We wasted a lot of time. We need each other," he said. Sophia grudgingly agreed but drew a boundary. "We cannot date again. I love Michael, but being with you puts us in the wrong place," she said. Nathan pressured her. "Please stay for supper. We need to talk about what happened between us." His voice was desperate. For the first time in a week, Sophia's life seemed worthwhile. "I was in so much pain," he said. "I had no idea how I was going to live." Sophia wanted to arrive home before Michael and make supper so he would not find out about her trip to Bristol. The late trains were overcrowded and dangerous, and lingering would only make matters worse. But Nathan was correct. They deserved to have supper together. Sophia couldn't get the notion that she was evading the main question. She wanted to remain but wasn't sure what that meant. She didn't intend to flirt, but she felt secure with Nathan. He never made her uncomfortable or talked negatively about Michael. She sat close to him, and their hands sometimes touched. It seemed natural, none of them was looking to capitalize on the circumstance, they just wanted to see where it would go. Despite the consolation, Sophia's guilt persisted. The sensible option was to settle things down and schedule another meeting after they had resolved their differences. Staying for supper seemed hazardous, but she couldn't tell what was right anymore. With difficulty, she removed her hand from Nathan's and excused herself to the toilet. She turned on the phone. Michael had texted her, begging her to call. Sophia, surprised that he had not followed up, decided to fib. She would tell him she was in Bristol for a last-minute meeting that had run late. It was a credible excuse. She phoned his telephone, but he did not respond. Frustrated, she texted, "Sorry for the delay, urgent meeting in Bristol. Will return later." Sending the text brought her a moment of comfort, but before she could put her phone away, another message arrived, "What meeting at work?" Sophia blushed. "They claimed you were on vacation." Her lies had been revealed. Why hasn't Michael called? What could he know? She attempted to concentrate, but was distracted by the abrupt failure of her strategy. She frequently phoned Michael, but he did not answer. She felt a combination of shame and defiance. She wondered what he expected from playing these games. Her following message said, "I didn't mean to bother you. I am now in Brighton with my aunt. She is feeling ill and has begged for assistance. Do not worry, he'll be back tomorrow." Her stomach churned. Why did she say that? She was startled by her own facets. She realized she couldn't face Michael like way, so she stayed in Bristol overnight to gather her composure before addressing him. But she soon knew it was incorrect. The wise decision would be to stick to her plan and return home. Surprising Michael with a late visit from Brighton felt safer, but remaining in Bristol risked everything, both for Nathan and Michael. Sophia pocketed her phone and went back to Nathan, relieved with her choice. When she returned, he drew her closer, stroking his hand over her shoulder and neck before kissing her. You were gone so long, I thought you would run away, he joked. She felt reassured, her fears fading as she took in his release. But after a lengthy hug, she backed away. I need to think, she said for both of them. Nathan, I need a motel room for tonight. Please do not persist, but I am remaining in Bristol. We can have supper without thinking about time, but after that, you'll say good night. Do you understand? Nathan agreed and kissed her again. Thanks, Sophia. You are a miracle. I'm not sure what I'd do without you. Despite consenting to come home, Sophia was shocked by her choice to remain. It seemed cowardly, as if she couldn't confront Michael while her emotions for Nathan were still raw. Sophia sat at the table, thinking, it'll be clearer in the morning. As Nathan contacted lodgings for her, she checked her phone. There are no new texts. Frustrated, she called Michael again, but there was still no response. Why was he being so difficult? The quiet between them deepened. Nathan, who had located a motel, recommended they find out where to eat. To hell with it, Sophia determined. She planned to enjoy the evening and deal with everything else later. She took Nathan's arm and put her face against his, reassured by his fragrance. She didn't know what was right anymore, and she didn't care. During dinner, the discussion turned. Nathan, enjoying his lemon tart, remarked, "Today's been like a miracle. I didn't believe I could be this happy again." Sophia shyly said, "I want to be with you so much, but I can't. It would wreck everything. We need to be realistic about when we can get together." Nathan nodded, his eyes knowing. The times we do have will be valuable. Nothing else matters. Sophia muttered, "It is a lie. Staying away is a self-inflicted hurt." When they kissed again, Nathan's hand lightly rested on her chest. Their bodies were near, but not intimate. Sophia persisted, her voice trembling, "What we feel has nothing to do with that." Nathan said quietly, "Then what is it?" "Nathan, I love you," she whispered, moving her hand over his to her knee. His warmth so near felt good, but she was cautious, not wanting to take any further chances. When he touched her knee again, she put her hand over his. "Please don't ruin dinner," she said quietly. "I've really appreciated this. You are adorable. I like you, but I am married. I can't convey my emotions as you can. Can't you say it?" He inquired, his eyes begging. "Do you love me even a little?" Sophia's heart raced. "You know the answer to that," she said, her voice tense. "Would I still be here if I didn't love you?" They kissed again, but this time she backed away, taking in Nathan's black hair and the serious expression in his eyes. Sophia knew she loved him. It surprised her. She had always felt that her love for Michael would protect her from loving anyone else, but she now realizes that it was more than just Michael, it was the relationship they had. The intimacy. She felt like an adolescent with her first infatuation, wondering what to do. The grown-up part of her urged she should go to bed with Nathan, but her allegiance to Michael and dread of complicating matters kept her in turmoil. Even though her emotions drew her to Nathan, she continued saying no. Nathan finished his coffee as he realized her difficulty. It was 10 p.m. Sophia, feeling the effects of the wine, considered using the toilet to clear her brain. If only she could speak with Michael, she thought. Things would improve. She checked her phone, but there were still no answers. She phoned home and then Michael's mobile phone. No response. Why didn't he pick up? Panic set in. He knows, she reasoned. Michael knows I am seeing someone else. The idea had overwhelmed her. Michael's acute intellect would detect her, and the humiliation of being revealed would crush her. Sophia rushed back to the table, shivering, and told Nathan, "I want to, but I can't. I apologize, this is just too much. I can't handle it. It's not correct." She felt relieved as the words left her lips. She dashed out into the fresh air, and Nathan followed. They were stuck in the throng headed for the metro. Nathan spoke to Sophia while holding her hand, but she did not listen. She felt stronger after seeing the tears in his eyes. "We can have one last drink at my hotel," she replied, her voice softening. "But that is it. We had a great day. You'll never forget it, and who knows what comes next. Nothing is certain." Sophia realized she couldn't sleep with Nathan. She was not inebriated, and she had made it plain that this would not happen. It may have been simple, but the guilt, the continual worry of being found, and the need to lie to Michael made things too difficult. She had no interest for such lifestyle. They headed to the hotel bar, and Nathan ordered champagne to commemorate a special occasion, one that differed from their typical routine. Sophia, relieved by her choice, sipped the drink and kissed Nathan, thankful for his understanding. It felt right. He earned her devotion, and she wished he would love her. She knew Michael couldn't give her what she wanted, but she could deal with it. Everything appeared normal till later. Nathan fell asleep next to her 2 hours later, smiling softly. Sophia was perplexed. How did this occur? They had an intimate time at the bar, hesitant to express their thoughts too openly, but their connection was undeniable. After completing the champagne, the night became more intense and emotions ran high. Nathan murmured, "This is really essential. I'll remember this moment forever." Sophia said, "I love Michael, but my feelings for you are real." Nathan leaned forward and asked her to prove it. Soon, they were in bed together. Nathan was awkward but persistent, and Sophia valued his efforts. Though it wasn't as easy as with Michael, she allowed herself be vulnerable in order to make it memorable for him. They both thought that the night would be memorable, but it wasn't. They were exhausted and had drank too much. Despite their intensity, they both recognized, without saying so, that physical contact had been a mistake. Sophia regretted it, believing that the gesture had not enhanced their relationship but rather confused matters. She had lied to Michael, and it weighed hard on her. Meanwhile, Michael sat alone at home, becoming more worried as the evening progressed. Sophia's absence seemed odd, and he quickly realized she hadn't gone to Bristol for business. Her faucet was sloppy. He remembered the minor things, such as how she had changed clothing before leaving for work, indicating that she would not be going to work. She was attempting to disguise her intentions from him. Michael's thoughts raced over previous talks, notably one about organic milk. Sophia had advocated for an unconventional attitude when he had not heard from her before. Could it have been from someone else? He pondered. By dusk, Michael was certain Sophia was with her boyfriend. The indications were all there, yet he disregarded them. Now it was evident. She betrayed him. Their once close connection had shifted, and Michael was forced to confront the reality. Sophia had separated herself well before the faucet started. Michael felt his weariness was due to being unwell, but now has not so sure. Sophia, being as brilliant as she is, should have detected his condition and stepped in to aid, as they normally do at difficult times. He realized he needed to snap out of it. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life wallowing in bitterness and self-pity. Stop complaining and go on, he reminded himself, pushing through. He poured coffee, put on Edinburgh Calling by the Rolling Stones, and attempted to cheer himself up. Sophia had left him. Fine. Had abandoned her. In the end, death was a last farewell. As he drank his coffee, Michael reflected on the few times in his life when he had actually felt pleasure, such as reaching the summit of a mountain after a difficult climb, a feeling of achievement and calm. He had always wanted to return to the Scottish Highlands, where he had fond recollections of camping and climbing as a child. There was no stopping him. After a brief internet search, he contacted a hotel and was surprised to find a room available. It seemed like destiny. He packed his suitcase, wrote Sophia a little message, and left the home about midnight. While driving, Michael saw a missed call from Sophia but did not check. He did not want to hear her justifications. 4 hours later, he paused for breakfast at a quiet auto repair shop before continuing his drive, feeling better with each mile as the mountains came into view. When Michael arrived in the Scottish Highlands, he felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. He changed into his boots and went for a stroll around the lake, immediately feeling rejuvenated by the fresh air. He checked the map for a walk up Ben Nevis at the hotel bar before heading out with some refreshments. The route was packed with other hikers, but as he ascended, his hips began to hurt, causing him to slow down. He took ibuprofen and continued on, thinking I even passed a couple slopokes as he deviated from the main route to the crags. He came upon 2 young ladies, Isabel and Victoria, who were apprehensive about the path. He volunteered to lead them, stating that he had a condition that required him to stop regularly. They were kind and offered smart questions. Along the way, he learnt that they had just completed their final examinations at Manchester University. They climbed Ben Nevis together, and despite his exhaustion, Michael found satisfaction in their young vitality and genuine care for him. They enjoyed chocolate at the peak before descending to Glencoe to reach the top of Ben Nevis. Michael did not think of Sophia or death the whole time. Despite the discomfort, he felt more alive than he had in a long time. Sophia awoke feeling terrific after her night with Nathan. She had sent him home at 2 a.m. and now, after a short shower and breakfast, she was ready to return to Edinburgh. She was relieved that her short expedition had gone well, even though she realized she was running late for work. The events of the night appeared simpler to absorb after a good night's sleep. So what if I succumb to temptation? That was behind her now. She handled the issue properly, followed her ideals, and lived. It's time to go back to normal. On her way home from the station, Sophia changed into the clothing she had left behind the day before. She regained control and was prepared to confront Michael. The terror she had experienced was a distant memory. She hurriedly bathed and changed into a work outfit, anxious not to be late again. If she saw Nathan again, she'd offer a day trip to Cambridge, which Michael wouldn't like but she could share with him. Sophia returned home to find the house deserted. She was disappointed. She wanted to instantly clear the air with Michael. She would now have to wait until the evening to provide her explanation. She looked at the letter Michael had put on the bulletin board. The message began, "Received bad news. I left to think. Not sure when I'll be back. At least on Friday. Hope you enjoyed your night in Bristol. Say hi to your friend for me. Michael." Sophia reread it multiple times. Her first response was irritability. What was Michael playing at? The terrible news seemed hazy, and she wondered why he couldn't be specific about it. Was his mother ill? Has he lost his job? He worked for a turbulent firm, and maybe his luck had run out, or was he dismissed for losing his cool? Michael was intelligent, but he lacked self-control at times. The snarky reference of her friend upset her. Michael attempted to make her feel guilty. She dialed his mobile phone, but there was no response, so she called his office and talked with his secretary, who seemed embarrassed. Michael took sick leave, the secretary said. Sick leave? Sophia inquired, perplexed. Yes, he's off until the end of next week. Sophia argued, that's ridiculous. Michael isn't sick. The secretary appeared uncomfortable with the subject. Sophia hung up, feeling uneasy. Could Michael really be ill? He had kept it well disguised, but now that she thought about it, he had been moving slowly lately, dragging his feet up the stairs and laboring with basic chores. Had she overlooked the signs? Her stomach churned. Was Michael masking his mental agony with a physical illness? Could he have learned about Nathan? The thought made her feel ill. But why had Michael done so rashly, left without notifying her? She needed to speak with him, but she couldn't resist the suspicion that he knew about Nathan. Sophia took a deep breath and examined her phone for recent calls. Among the missed calls was an unknown number from the previous afternoon. She dialed it. Good morning, Highland Retreat. How can I assist you? A voice replied. Sophia instantly pulled everything together. I am searching for my husband's reservation. Michael Marshall, she said. Mum has booked a single room for tonight, the receptionist said. This was bizarre. If Michael was indeed ill, why would he go to the Scottish Highlands alone to hike? She knew Michael utilized climbing to clear his thoughts, but it didn't make sense for him to go mountain climbing while claiming to be sick. He had to be lying about something, and there was only one reason why he had departed without informing her. Sophia was in tears, overcome with remorse and the devastation she had inflicted. She phoned into work, alleging a family emergency, without considering rescheduling meetings or missing deadlines. She wasn't much of a walker, but she had the necessary gear, including a map and GPS. She ignored Nathan's 2 messages, and Michael has yet to respond. She went to her vehicle once she finished her coffee. Meanwhile, Michael felt a dull aching in his hip, which was far better than the agony he'd had earlier on the road. He needed some rest. He handed Isabel and Victoria money for drinks while he and Elena navigated the packed hotel bar and found a seat by the coal fire. The warmth felt amazing and he relaxed despite his exhaustion. The pub was alive with laughing and chatter of mountain treks. Isabel spoke and Michael faked a grin. Only when Elena arrived with drinks did he feel somewhat better. They arranged for the girls to freshen up in his room before returning to the campus. After they finished eating, Michael picked a beef pie and chips but couldn't eat much. The ladies completed their meal and Michael looked around the bar to decide on his next beverage. That's when he saw Sophia standing out from the throng. He was astonished. So what was she doing here? Before he could consider more, Sophia saw him. Her uneasiness was obvious. Michael spontaneously kissed Isabel and Elena on the cheek before adding, "Thank you for today. I hope we remember this as a special day." He rose up and Sophia was standing there looking upset. "How did you find me?" Michael inquired, trying a grin. "These are Isabel and Elena. They are my pals. Do not worry." All three ladies were puzzled. "Maybe it's time for you girls to freshen up," Michael offered, his voice bland. As the girls walked away, Sophia turned to him, her voice strained. "Michael, what is happening? Who are these girls? I read your letter. What does this mean?" "They are students from Manchester University," Michael stated. "We met on a trek. Their enthusiasm helped me reach the summit of Ben Nevis." Sophia, irritated, said, "But what about you? Why did you go without informing me? I sent you a message indicating we needed to chat, but that isn't relevant right now. You did not need to come here. A phone call would have been sufficient." Sophia felt a tinge of panic. "What just happened? What would you want to tell me?" Michael shrugged. "I just needed some human assistance. The girls were kind enough to provide it." He paused and then added, "I went to the hospital yesterday for some testing. I have cancer. Bladder cancer." Sophia froze and gripped the table. "I knew it. Why haven't you told me sooner?" "I tried, but you didn't answer my calls," Michael said, his voice lifeless. "You were too preoccupied with your aunt, remember?" Sophia paused, feeling nauseous. "I lied to you. I should not have. I should have not been so selfish. I should have been there for you," she said, closing her eyes and feeling guilty. Michael gave her a cautious look, his expression opaque. "It doesn't matter," he said gently. "This is all about me now, not your guilt. We all die alone, anyway." Sophia's heart hurt. "Please let me take care of you, Michael. I want to help." "Forget about me," Michael stated with a stern tone. "What is wrong with you? How's your aunt doing?" Sophia could feel her tears forming. "Michael, I came for you as quickly as I could, but I needed to travel to Bristol. I didn't go see my aunt. I lied about it. I am sorry." Michael's eyes did not soften. This is the absolute worst time to tell me everything." He shook his head and looked away, as if he couldn't take the weight of it all. Sophia felt her chest tightening. "Please let me be here for you, Michael. I will not leave you. I'll do whatever it takes to help you get through this." Michael's expression stiffened. "No, Sophia. You were with him when I was suffering. You have deceived me. Perhaps you never realized that marriage had duties in addition to advantages." "Michael, no," she said quietly, her voice cracking. "If I knew you needed me, I would have come. You are aware of this." Michael scoffed. "You make it seem like you just assist when it's convenient. That is not how marriage works." Sophia attempted to contain her emotions. "I tried calling you. You didn't answer." Her voice crackled. "I couldn't reach you." Michael's face distorted with fury. "Well, I don't want to hear excuses." The words hurt. Sophia felt deep down that there was nothing she could say to make things right. She had failed him in several ways. "I don't need you here, Sophia," Michael stated quietly but firmly. "I don't want to be angry anymore. I want peace." "Please, Michael," Sophia implored. "We can make it work. I will do anything." Michael stared at her one final time, his gaze far away. "I do not want you here. You remind me of everything that has gone wrong in my life. You are as much a sign of my condition as the discomfort from my cancer. I do not need your sympathy or your free time away from your beloved." Before Sophia could say anything further, Isabel and Elena arrived with beverages, but didn't want to disrupt the heated moment. Michael hugged them both. "Don't mind me," he said. "If you have anything to do at university tomorrow, you should go. I will handle on my own." Sophia felt a chilly weight on her chest. "Will your wife stay?" Isabel inquired quietly. Michael shakes his head. "It's difficult caring for an ill spouse and a lover. She has to go back." "We've decided to stay," Isabel said. "We can take our time, and we liked our stroll today so much that we want to go again tomorrow. But we will not steal your bed. We'll sleep on your room's rugs if we all get up early. We may join you in the morning and then travel directly to the university. It's early enough for us." Michael had tears welling up in his eyes. He looked at them with incredulity. How can strangers be so kind? They even attempted to preserve his dignity by claiming they were there for themselves, not him. "Let's go up to Pillar and Steeple," Isabel said softly. "I went up there in the clouds and I'd love to see them in all their glory, only if you want to." "I'm a vampire, draining the life out of you, young women," Michael said with a sad grin. "I can only do this with your help." They told him it was a terrific idea and went to bed. Sophia went without Michael noticing. Sophia was lost in contemplation as she drove home through the winding roads of the Scottish Highlands. She felt fatigued and ashamed. She couldn't get the notion that Michael had essentially commanded her to go. Why did Michael create such a spectacle with those girls? It seemed like an effort to embarrass her. The roads were deserted, and by the time Sophia reached the freeway, she had accepted the possibility that Michael had a purpose for his actions. She didn't want to offend him, but she also wanted to make things right. She needed time to show him that she still loved and would do all she could to help him through his sickness. It was only bad luck that she hadn't answered the phone when he received his diagnosis. If he had allowed her to accompany him to the hospital, there would have been no issue. Michael would understand when he called down. She felt pleased of herself for being honest about Nathan, regardless of what occurred next. Michael could not accuse her of lying. She'd be prepared for him to return home, sure that she could make things right. After all, it was in his best interests for her to care for him, visit him in the hospital, and look after him when he got home. She intended to speak with her bosses and was certain they would offer her maternity leave so she could concentrate solely on caring for him. She planned to tell Nathan what had occurred tomorrow. He'd help her put things in perspective and realize that her spouse needed to come first now. She got home at 4 a.m., went into bed unclean and fatigued, but certain she had done the right thing. She fell asleep almost instantly. Meanwhile, Michael had returned to the hospital and was sitting alone in the oncology waiting area. His doctor's tests had gone missing, and he couldn't schedule surgery until they were located. He waited an hour, feeling ignored. The clerk soon informed him that someone was waiting in the preparation area to repeat the examinations. He sat back on the bed in the little prep room, waiting, as if his life was about to be determined. There was nothing to read or gaze at from the window. Another hour has gone. Naturally, he had a lot to think about. Left alone in the silent chamber, his worry grew into terror. I must be a coward, he thought, as every muscle and nerve in his body pushed him to flee. Why let the physicians operate on him if there was no hope? Michael also attempted to make sense of his short interaction with Sophia. He came home from the mountains overnight, arriving at 8 a.m. to find Sophia waiting for him at the kitchen table, ready to depart for work. She informed him that she had prepared a hospital bag for him and would be visiting him in the evening. He declined the coffee since he wasn't permitted to eat or drink before the appointment and urged her not to be concerned about the visit. "He'll still be under anesthesia," he said. She inquired about the surgical procedures and what particular care he would need upon his return home. Nathan was not acknowledged, despite his obvious presence between them like a quiet wall. "Don't come at all," Michael lamented sadly. "I don't need your sympathy, and I might just think you're checking to see if I'm dying fast enough." He felt satisfied with his statements, but Sophia seemed to have been hit. She paused before responding. "I won't come if you don't want me to," she said sternly. "But don't say it's about me and Nathan. I've only seen him every 5 years because he needed a buddy. A big deal. Do not bother. Michael scoffed. It's simply drama. Cheating is easy. It's about ego and individuals who can't control their greed, who lie because they believe it's the best way to get what they want. They accept it, and everyone else can go to hell. Got it? Now, leave. Sophia departed for work, choking back tears, and Michael felt somewhat better after their disagreement. Alone in his room, he was overcome with a yearning to take control of his life. It had been a mistake to let physicians determine his destiny. Before he could act on that thinking, a young doctor walked in, reviewed his record, and gazed at him like a worried student. "What are you doing here?" the doctor inquired. "You should be in pre-op by now." "I was told I had to complete some tests first," Michael said, annoyed. "That's nonsense," the doctor said. "Go to pre-op now." Michael stood up with his mind made up. Life couldn't get much worse, therefore it was time to stand up for himself. He left the oncology ward feeling lighter. By the time he got to his vehicle, he knew he had made the correct choice. He had a few good days or weeks ahead of him, but the alternative of being drugged and asleep on a surgical table was much worse. He would enjoy the time he had left. He paused for coffee and a Danish before driving home, 3 hours after Sophia had gone for work. To his amazement, her automobile appeared in the driveway, along with an unusual black Audi convertible that was obstructing his parking place. He parked on the street, walked past the vehicle, and then around the back of the house, not wanting to deal with any guests. He took the spare key from the pot of flowers in the greenhouse and entered via the kitchen. The coffee machine was brewing, but while he stood there, he heard voices in the hall, Sophia's and Aman's. He instantly recognized Nathan. Despite all, he was not ready for the treachery. His desire to confront them was tremendous, but his wrath was drained by his condition. He was surprised and confused of what to do. Part of him found it amusing to listen on the talk, but he also knew he had to confront them. He went inside his modest office, closed the door to conceal the noises, and sat down. His rage subsided when he realized the gravity of the situation. He should not let Sophia's treachery consume his last days. There were more essential things to concentrate on. His gaze searched the room, which was loaded with memories, bookshelves, his audio system, and an outdated computer. He had made a choice. This time, he intended to depart permanently. He collected his walking pack, but before moving upstairs, his eyes was drawn to something on the top shelf, his grandfather's ceremonial swords. He took them down. These swords, handed down from his grandpa, were presented to him upon his father's death. His grandpa had served in the Navy, taken part in the search for the Bismarck, and got the Distinguished Service Order. One of the swords had even been worn to Buckingham Palace when his grandpa was given the medal. As a youngster, Michael pictured himself wielding the sword in vast battles. Holding one of the blades, he understood precisely what he had to do. If Nathan and Sophia believed their affair was legitimate, he had a surprise for them. Michael heard footsteps entering the kitchen, and while Sophia went for coffee, he swiftly shut the kitchen door, locking himself in the hallway. He then entered the living room, where Nathan stood by the fireplace. Nathan's grin froze as he saw Michael carrying a blade in each hand. The two guys glanced at one another. Michael flung one of the swords at Nathan, who stepped back in surprise as it clattered to the ground nearby. "If I were you," Michael said coldly, "I'd take her. You know who I am, so it's no surprise that I'm giving you a greater opportunity than you offered me. Did you believe I was already dead? Didn't you? You've made a mistake. Now we'll see how much you adore her. Will you battle for her, or do you simply want her because it's easy?" He stopped, allowing the stillness to linger. "This is a fight to the death. I've got nothing to lose. Only one of us will leave here alive." Nathan appeared afraid. "Where is Sophia?" "Look, you've got this completely wrong." "Put down your swords and let me explain," Nathan replied. Michael lifted his sword and pointed it at Nathan. "Where is your pride? So you're going to take her without fighting for her? If you don't fight, you will perish. I'm going to liquidate you like a dog. No second chances, no compassion. Well, locate Sophia, who can explain everything. But this is a duel. Be a guy. Do not hide behind her." Nathan paused. "I don't think you stand a chance with my rusty blade in your ribs." Michael scoffed. No, believe me. This is not negotiable. You have 30 seconds to prepare, then we fight. The atmosphere in the room was tense. Finally, Nathan grasped the sword and raised it to block Michael's attack. The clash of swords was intense and spectacular. Michael hesitated, attempting to stabilize himself. He was debilitated by sickness, but he had practiced with a foil at school. He lifted his sword and struck at Nathan, unconcerned about the outcome but eager for a good battle. We're battling for Sophia, Michael said. Let's see whether you're willing to die for her. If I win, I will leave her permanently. Be a man, Michael yelled again, but Nathan avoided, almost crouching. The conflict could not endure long. The sound of hammering from the kitchen briefly distracted Michael. Nathan parried another punch, but then he began to retaliate. He lifted his sword and lunged, but, in his desperation, he ran right into Michael's blade. The sword cracked at the hilt, and Nathan dropped to the ground, the jagged chunk of steel embedded in his chest. Michael lowered his sword and focused his eyes on Nathan, who lay unmoving on the floor. He stepped over and unlocked the kitchen doors. Sophia, what have you done? She hurried in and found Nathan on the floor, blood everywhere. She knelt alongside him and held him. It's too late, Michael said bluntly. Your lover paid the price for your choices. Michael didn't have to think too hard about what was next. He grabbed his luggage without even checking to see whether Nathan had died. He was confident enough, he had seen enough blood to know when the work was complete. It was not about vengeance. Eliminating Nathan had done little to improve Sophia's situation. He could not force himself to care about her anymore. Michael got into his vehicle and drove. 10 miles. 20 kilometers. He just kept going. He had no idea where, but he didn't want to worry about it. He purchased pills at petrol stops along the road, knowing he'd need them for the agony rather than to finish things. He avoided the roads because of fear of being identified, but partly because he didn't want to face what had done. By dark, he had discovered a lonely road outside Perth and spent the night sleeping in his vehicle. The next morning, he drove to John O'Groats, the beginning point for a lengthy trek across northern England. He enjoyed breakfast at a tiny cafe before leaving with just a light backpack, drink, chocolate, and a rain jacket. For a while, he was alone, walking slowly, but others eventually passed him, providing advice on the trip and the weather. Some might stop for lunch or gather at bars in the evening. It was rough but tranquil, and no one questioned him about the sword-wielding butcher they'd seen in the headlines. He realized he no longer resembled the guy Sophia had previously known, the man in the images the police had undoubtedly given her. He walked around 10 kilometers every day. The agony was excruciating some days, yet tolerable on others. When he struggled, others would stop and offer to call for aid, but Michael always persuaded them to leave him alone. On more than one occasion, he was encircled by people and nearly carried by them, yet each morning, he discovered that he still had a few steps in him. It may have been helpful if it hadn't hurt so much. After a week, the effort became usual, but the distance decreased with each day. He knew he'd never make it to Robin Hood's Bay, where the route ends. Most of the time, he strolled in a trance, numbed by medications. Every stride sent a stinging agony through his hip. One day, the weather went bad. A furious wind blew over the moors and hail pummeled him as he ascended Nina's Rig. The storm blinded him, and he lost his way, ending up in a peat bog. After much effort, he was able to release himself, but tiredness and agony caught up with him. He sought refuge behind a stone ledge, but his foot slipped on a damp stone and he fell, striking the ground hard. This time, there was no one there to assist. He didn't realize how far he had fallen. He could smell damp peat, and chilly water ran down his collar. Then everything became dark. Meanwhile, Sophia got a call late at night while eating supper at home. After so many weeks of silence, she had stopped expecting to hear from Michael. The cops offered her very little information. He was in serious condition at a Yorkshire hospital, but he was also in police arrest. Sophia scrubbed the dishes, attempting to ignore her amazement, before packing a thermos of coffee and some sandwiches. She dressed warmly and went. The travel would take around 4 hours, and the peaceful road ahead offered her time to reflect. Could her life be worse? She probably did not want to know. She arrived to the hospital and handed up her ID to a drowsy officer at the door. Hikers discovered Michael unconscious in a swamp and evacuated him to the hospital, but he has not yet recovered consciousness. Sophia entered his room and saw him laying motionless, hooked up to an oxygen mask. His face was pallid and his eyes were sunken deeply. It was evident he was very unwell. She sat silently alongside him for a long time, unsure what to feel. She finally kissed his cheek, and he moved, surprising her. His eyelids flickered open, and he grabbed for her hand. "Stop the pain," he said softly, clutching her hand. His eyes opened wide, and he grinned faintly. "I'm glad you came, Sophia." He appeared to go back asleep, while Sophia remained alongside him, clutching his hand. She was taken aback by how fragile he seemed, tormented by guilt over his state, knowing it was related to her betrayal. His wrecked physique was the result of her decisions. She tenderly massaged the back of his hand before asking the nurse about his pain management. The medic revealed that Michael had a shattered pelvis, but his cancer had already caused too much harm. They were administering the largest possible amount of morphine, but he was still in excruciating agony. "Talk to him," the nurse said. "Keep him preoccupied. Make him hold on." Sophia sat back down next to Michael, trying not to bother him. After a time, he opened his eyes and glanced at her. She leaned out to softly touch his face. "I'm sorry, Michael, for everything," she said quietly. "I wasn't there when you needed me, and I'll never forgive myself for it. But I am not leaving you now." "It's ruined," Michael said softly, hardly audible. "This is not your fault. You're here now. That is all that matters." Sophia drew closer as he removed the air mask. "I'm sorry I liquidated your friend," he said quietly. "He deserved it, but it's not fair that I took him from you. You deserve someone to care for you." "I want you, Michael," Sophia whispered, her voice cracking. "It's not fair." He fixed his eyes on her, despite his damaged physique. His eyes still seemed alive. After a lengthy pause, he said, "That's how it should be. We had something before. It's better to love and lose, as the saying goes. Not everything was in vain. I need your help to die." Sophia's heart broke. She couldn't believe what she heard. "Don't say that, Michael," she said. "I am here, and I will remain. I have never stopped loving you." "You don't understand," he muttered, his suffering too great to endure. "I just can't take it. I do not even deserve this. We need to say our goodbyes, and then I want you to help me depart forever." Sophia's tears streamed as she battled to accept his comments. She realized he was serious. It would be murder if she assisted in his death, but her misery and guilt were overpowering. Michael's body trembled with anguish. He held the covers, his eyes closed and immovable. Sophia massaged his cheek and said comforting words, but she felt helpless and frantic. She asked for assistance, and a young doctor came at Michael's bedside, studying his medical records. He avoided staring at Michael. "He needs something for the pain," Sophia said quickly. "We're doing everything we can," the doctor said, without meeting her eyes. "The consultant will review his meds later." "You're not addressing the pain," Sophia argued, her irritation mounting. "What are you rescuing him for? More suffering?" The doctor shakes his head. "You are unhappy. It's preferable to take a pause, drink some coffee, and collect your thoughts." Sophia was furious and moved over to kiss Michael on the lips. "I am sorry, Michael." She muttered, "I was trying to help." She kissed his forehead before leaving, fatigued and emotionally spent. Despite everything, she felt an odd combination of joy and melancholy. When she passed, the policeman at the entryway stood up. "Go home and get some rest," he urged pleasantly. "Things will look clearer in the morning." Sophia realized in her automobile that she had nowhere to go. The notion of traveling 200 miles home was awful. The sky was starting to brighten, and she cuddled up in her seat and fell asleep. Her phone rang at 11 a.m. She awoke with a tight neck and a parched tongue, disorientated. The ward administrator delivered the news. Michael died dead during the night. Sophia was informed that she may pick up his items, which would be stored for 24 hours. She walked out of the vehicle and saw a parking ticket. She strolled around the hospital, eventually arriving to Michael's room, which had been prepped for a new patient. She proceeded to the nurse's station, and when the nurse recognized her, she gave up Michael's phone and wallet. "Michael's at the morgue," the nurse said, noting that the death certificate cited cancer and severe injuries as the causes of death. "No autopsy will be performed. With aggressive cancers like his, the body simply gives up." The nurse's comments seemed remote, as if they belonged to someone else's life. Sophia followed Michael's lead and walked from coast to coast after a month. It would have been great to do it with him, but she took solace in the loneliness of the trek. She placed an apology for Michael behind a stone, a message she never got to convey. Sophia got home and discovered she had lost interest in her career. She was able to resign after receiving a substantial insurance claim. The home, filled with memories of Michael, was too much to endure. She sold it and relocated to Edinburgh, where she obtained a low-wage position as a legal consultant for a charity that assists juvenile offenders. Her profession preoccupied her, and she met many nice, giving individuals, some of whom she dated, despite her image as remote and dry. Every year, she went on hikes. Her most recent trip was to Corsica on the GR20 route. Michael would have enjoyed it, she reflected, recalling his enthusiasm for trekking. Sophia got an invitation to Nathan's memorial almost a year later. She considered going but eventually decided to go. The ceremony in St. Andrew's Cathedral was attended by around 500 people, and Nathan seemed to be a major figure. She couldn't put his family's grief into context with the guy she knew. The ceremony was followed by a reception, but Sophia opted to depart early to return to work. She was not ready to join that world. Thank you for watching. What do you believe Michael and Sophia's tale tells us about regret and redemption? Please let us know in the comments.